out of this discourse of production of content by users online in these environments comes this term producage. So it's kind of like you're not only a user of a system, you're not only a consumer of media, but you actually are producing content. There's a big problem here though. Most end-user license agreements of these platforms, they actually set the terms so that whatever you upload there will exist there after you die. I actually recently got this notice to my inbox, like, you haven't been in touch with this person for a while, maybe you should say hello. This person had died a year ago. So that Facebook also acts as like ghosts the machine at some times. But also you have no right over the content. So in some ways, these platforms also are kind of new media feudal platforms. So you can operate there, but you don't own the platform. So I think we need to also remodel these ways of working online, so these models are not copied into real-life practices. In one event in Amsterdam called the World Garden, there was a publication that came out, and I was talking a lot about this issue of how to imagine different ways of working in open or closed environments. A walled garden is kind of a metaphor of this kind of a closed environment where everybody who is inside can communicate, but then outside of that, there's limited access to it. So social media online is like a set of walled gardens, and there's different rules how you let other people talk to you, while the internet originally was open, commons, and free. But actually for capitalist economy, this complete free and open is also desirable. So when you actually set rules, who can operate in your terrain of media, you're actually also taking control. Because I think these are very complex issues. But so basically, we are growing flowers in somebody else's gardens while it is also our own garden. And there's a need to develop different kinds of logics of how we operate on these platforms. So we are actually also gaining control over our lives and not only supporting large media corporations. The other things that might be useful is to look at social practice and license. And maybe a small reminder that it's kind of problematic to take a technological metaphor like a network or software and sort of copy and paste it, which itself is a technical metaphor, onto life directly. So it's more like we can learn about these kinds of practices and logics of operation and think about applying them in a modified way to other fields of life. So open source for me often is more of a social practice of sharing and a way of granting license to use a resource in a new way. So maybe we think about what kind of licenses can we generate for the use of land, besides the everyman's rights that I so value as an avid picker of mushrooms and a fisherman. And also what gets transferred here is really an approach than a technology in today's discussion. So now I shift to talk a little very briefly about this one project that I'm doing, so that I still have time at the end. How much time have I? 3 minutes left. Wow, I'll do this then. Very good. Basically, I work with a group of artists and scientists in a residency at sea, paying attention to particularly the Baltic Sea, but we started in the Irish Sea. We bring people together to cross their disciplines and do a lot of research on a boat-based residency, with the understanding that if we cross disciplines, we can actually generate some knowledge and help each other to also mediate that with different communities and people. And Baltic Sea definitely has the need for all attention it can get. And this is the kind of boat that we were using last year. And the route that we took to get to Belfast and Liverpool. And some work that we did, but we talk about this later, so I go to the last section. This quick, 21st century co-op. So, agency and land. maybe perhaps the challenge here is not how to reform the very economic ownership of land, but how people relate with land. So agency, I think, is a good term here. For example, the term environment is often considered as very abstract. It's like, yes, we know the problem, but what can we do? So it's like, how can you operate more with areas close to you or land close to you? How can we also think about cycles of time differently in relation to production of resources, and how the social relations around these modes of production are organized? Some examples. In my email box last week, Helsinki Organic Food Network, I was offered locally produced tofu and honey. So what this generates is a sort of new social relationship of how in a local community you buy food in a different way and you communicate and get to know people through that practice. Ecology in Greek used to also mean living relations. So in some sense, I think everybody who's been talking about so far, we talked a lot about how we relate and what are the living relations between not only humans, but with other entities in our organic lives. So the things that I would like to think about is how we can use networks to kind of create a different relationship with land. In the 90s, World Wildlife Foundation was kind of selling you a square meter rainforest to protect, but it was not done in a way that it would be very engaging. So the program was abandoned. So how is affect created between people and land? So this is not about romantic emotion only about like lost heritage or lost land, but just simply different emotions between you and land that create commitment and potentially an ethical relationship. Recently, I gave a talk a year ago in Bandung, at Common Room in Indonesia, and I was talking about an idea that I have about how we could make relationship with trees in the forest. I myself fly too much, and my carbon footprint is really too big. I would take 872 Nordic pine trees that I would have growing somewhere to deal with the carbon that I produce every year. So I thought about this project, that how about actually generate an environment where the trees can be planted. So these guys actually have started doing that, and so you can kind of contribute to a pool and trees get planted. I should visit there later this year and work also on the same project. So maybe you could invite people to invest also to land, to convert something that is not in ecological or productive use. Maybe you could kind of start sharing through networks also land and create a different logic of distribution and production. So what I'm suggesting is a co-op structure of the 21st century where we would combine social networks to create these modes of production, distribution, and a sense of ownership. Sense of ownership is different than saying, this is mine. And I think this is the thing about open source, is that one piece of software can belong to many. Could this be the case also with land? Or is it a singular ownership? Can your Facebook grow tomatoes or basil if mine does chilies? Can we exchange them? If we really want, and I think this point about this issues being really cultural and philosophical, it's mind constructs. How can we operate? But of course there are also laws and sort of issues of whether we can do this, but it really is about will. We can create distributed economies that support rural lives and island cities, or here one should say support urban lives by tying them with rural lives. So with different ways of tying manufacturing with consumption, we may be able to bring ethics and sort of translocal sense of power to this framework. And so, I don't know, maybe somebody remembers a song from the 60s, which said like, revolution will not be televised. So here would be my slogan for the texts that we've developed in 21st century corps are not televised. They are networked and rooted, entangled and organic. So I guess here I'm trying to disrupt this kind of clean idea of technology as a way of organizing our lives. But it's more messy and it's quite rooted, grassroots maybe. Yeah, thanks.